College in the Age of Jackson, from the 1820s through the 1840s. The typical college student of today would have difficulty recognizing the college of the Jacksonian era. All but a few of the colleges were private. Of all of the United States colleges and universities, only 17 out of 246 were public. Most were private and maintained by a Protestant denomination to train religious ministers or to indoctrinate young men students in proper religious values. College was funded solely by tuition or by donations from their churches. The vast majority of colleges were all male. Higher education was still regarded as the final polish of a refined gentleman preparing for public life, a profession, or the ministry. Women, it was felt by men at the time, had no need of this final polish, as their life would be domestic and private. Some colleges did admit women, however. Most notably was Oberlin College in Ohio, which was the first college to admit women in 1833. Georgia Female College, now called Wesleyan College, and Mount Holyoke in Massachusetts also admitted women. College was not vocationally oriented as today. You weren't taught how to become an accountant, engineer, architect, lawyer, or doctor. For these professions, you apprenticed yourself to a professional and learned on the job. But during the age of Jackson, there were a few medical or law schools, but there were very, very few. College curriculum had remained unchanged for centuries. The prescribed course of study was called liberal arts and sciences. Liberal meant suitable for a free society. Students learned ancient languages, Latin, Greek, and perhaps Hebrew. They studied literature, natural science and mathematics, and political moral philosophy, all tailored to the beliefs of the church sponsor. Some colleges added modern languages and history, but there were no electives. Everyone took the same courses. Colleges were small. The vast majority had typically 3 or 4 professors and only 20 to 30 students. Professors were extremely formal with students and expected deference and discipline from the students. Many professors were only a few years older than the students. In fact, at many colleges, the professors were younger than the students. An example was Joseph Caldwell. Joseph Caldwell became the president of the University of North Carolina when he was only 24 years old. Student behavior was regulated by a strict code of behavior. These rules determined how the students were to act as students and in their private lives. Rules told them when to turn out lamps at night and the proper form of addressing professors, and infractions led to fines or suspension. In reality, though, students defied their professors. One professor had to physically tackle his students to discipline them. Students frequently broke into the college chapel at night and rang the bells, or led the president's horse to the top of buildings, or threw snowballs or rocks through their professors' quarters. In one famous incident, the president of Dickinson College in Pennsylvania announced he was planning to visit Staunton, Virginia, and left on his journey. Students sent a note to Staunton, Virginia, informing the police that an escaped lunatic was heading their way who would probably claim to be a college professor, and he should be returned under guard. Other student actions were more violent. Professors were physically attacked by mobs angry at rules or poor food. Some teachers were stoned, horsewhipped, or shot. A University of Virginia professor was murdered by his students in 1840. Why so much discontent? The rules of college life had been written years earlier, when most college students were only 14 to 18 years old. And by the mid-1800s, most students were older. They were in their 20s, and the rules were outdated. In the Jacksonian world, where individual freedom of action was so highly prized, it was not surprising students did not conform to the strict rules of behavior. And while the rules were strict, enforcement was inconsistent. There were many colleges, and they needed students more than the students needed them. Professors might overlook offenses and then suddenly draw the line. Inconsistency led to contempt for authority. Colleges might expel or suspend entire student bodies for what they called Great Rebellion. But financial pressures led to their readmission for the price of a written apology in most cases. Princeton professor Samuel Miller in 1843 described students as, quote, unworthy, profligate, degraded, and miserable villains, unquote. But he also agreed to readmit students regardless of their offense, because without the students, he didn't get paid.